Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, poetry on the front lines.
Every child in Gaza is me. Every mother and father is me. Every house is my heart. Every tree is my leg.
After fleeing Gaza, award-winning Palestinian poet Mosab Abu Toha tours the West, using poetry as a force for liberation.
Every hole in the earth is my wound.
I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take.
My name is Mosab Abu Toha. I'm a Palestinian poet from Gaza. I'm talking to you from New Jersey.
Mosab, welcome to The Take. It is really a pleasure to have you here. December 2nd marked 1 year since you left Gaza, where you lost your house, the library you founded, and most importantly, at least 31 members of your family. Now you've been traveling the US and the world holding these incredibly popular signings for your new book, Forest of Noise. But on social media, you're still extensively sharing with the world the atrocities that are happening back home. And I wonder, what is that like for you to be physically here in the US, being lauded for your poetry, while your heart, your mind, and your extended family are back in Gaza?
Thank you, Malika, for having me. It is devastating that I am sitting in the United States. I'm lucky because I'm with my wife and 3 kids. But it is devastating to realize that I can't help anyone in Gaza the same way I couldn't help anyone while I was in Gaza. So just imagine that you are with your parents, with your siblings and their children in a refugee camp, in a shelter, in a school shelter in Gaza. You are unable to protect anyone. You are unable to provide with any food, with any water, with any medicine. And now you are in the United States, the country that is funding the genocide. So it is heartbreaking, because just before I came to the show, I got the news that a neighbor of mine, Nasif Abu Amrain, was killed with his wife and their 4 children. And then I looked at some of the names on the same list, and I found that a neighbor of mine who was also a student of mine, I taught him English, Yunus Abdullah Khilla, he was also killed in another airstrike. There is the story of my aunt's husband, Said Abu Toha, 81 years old, who went missing early November. And his son, Hassan, a cousin of mine, was posting the photo of his father and his phone number so that anyone who saw his father would call him, because he wants to bring his father home, or even not home, to the tent. And Hassan failed to know the place of his father until last week. Someone called him. He told him, "I think I saw someone who looks like your father, and I saw him on Street 8 a few days ago. Maybe you will find him there in that area." And it was a risky journey, because no one is in that area right now. So Hassan hurried to that street and he started looking, and he found the head of his father.
Oh, wow.
And what he did was to put his father's head in a plastic bag to bury his father. So this is one story of a relative of mine. That was just last week.
Mosab, I'm so sorry to hear that. You mentioned in that Instagram live shortly before we started our interview that every time you give a new interview, you have new stories, new awful, horrific stories to tell. You can't even tell the old stories of things that happened to you and your family because new tragedies have happened. What is it like to be holding space for all of that, for the tragedies, for the loss, and then to walk up to an event at a library or a public center or a bookstore, and some of these have lines around the block of people waiting to talk to you and to have their book of poetry signed by you?
I mean, it's devastating that I'm reading a poem about something that happened a few months ago. And then while I'm reading the poem, I get the news that the poem happened again in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the poem about the father who left his house to get some bread for his kids, but news of his death made it home, not the bread. And there was no bread. And death sits to eat whoever remains of the kids. And death doesn't need any bread and doesn't need any table. So in my first poetry collection, Things You May Find in My Ear, I wrote a poem. I mean, that book was published in 2022, so about 3 years ago. And in that book, there is a poem called Shrapnel Looking for Laughter, about a whole family, a Tanani family, who were killed in one airstrike in May 2021. And today, just today, before I came to the show, another whole family was killed, my neighbor's family. So I'm signing books to people, books that include poems about things that happened in the past. But these things are happening. These are movies that people, when people start to read, they are happening. Not only movies that are replayed or reshowed. No, these poems are happening on the page as they are reading them. So this is what makes writing poetry, not only reading poetry, but also writing poetry and sharing poetry, not a luxury, as Audre Lorde said.
Yeah. Not a luxury. Well, first of all, Mosab, the words are insufficient, but I'm so sorry for your loss and your continued loss that keeps happening. Your poetry is resonating, though, with people around the world very clearly, and you've won awards for it, like the American Book Award, the Palestine Book Award. But as you're saying, while we consume it, you live it. On your way out of Gaza with your wife and your children in November of last year, you were detained for 54 hours by Israeli forces. You were taken to an Israeli detention center in the Negev desert where you were assaulted. You wrote a poem about it called On Your Knees, which is the saying that they would tell all of the Palestinian detainees. May I ask you to read a part of it?
On your knees. They might kill us. Someone next to me weeps. I need to be with my pregnant wife and baby daughter. A soldier screams, on your knees. We are on our knees. On your knees. They throw us into a truck. It moves and then stops. They take us out. On your knees. Minutes later, someone kicks me in the stomach. I fly with pain. On your knees. Then someone kicks me in the face. My head is down. My nose bleeds. On your knees. I hear soldiers chit-chatting. On your knees. They take us far away from Gaza to the Negev desert. Someone there tells us, on your knees. For most of us, we are sleeping outside of Gaza for the first time. On your knees. In the toilet, no toilet paper, no water to clean. You are done? On your knees. Drops of water, a piece of bread. On your knees. Interrogation. 2 hours later, a soldier in English says, we are sorry about the mistake. You are going to Gaza. On your knees.
Thank you for that. That last line that you wrote, we're sorry about the mistake. Talk to me about how that felt for you. Because 1 minute you're being accused of being a Hamas operative, and the next minute you're released with a Sarí, but no money, no wallet, none of your belongings, none of your passports.
Well, Malika, indeed, the fact that one soldier said, we are sorry about the mistake, you are going home, I thought they were just, joking with me. And I didn't believe them. I wanted to convince that soldier was true about it, because he told me we are sorry about the mistake just 2 hours after an Israeli captain interrogated me. And I said, are you serious? And then there was a moment of silence. Then I said, can you answer me? And he said, yes, why would I not be serious? I was released the next day. So that was about 55 hours after I was abducted at the checkpoint. And I later, now I still continue to ask this question. What if I was killed in my house on October 28th last year? Because our house was bombed that day. It's a 4-story building. There used to live there in that house about 25 members of my immediate family. And what if I was killed in that airstrike? What if I was the target, just like I was the target of that abduction? Would someone come to the rubble of my house and say, we are sorry about the mistake? And just imagine how many people have been killed while they were inside their houses with their families.
None of this is easy subject matter. But yet you still find the words here to give these interviews and tell the rest of the world. and the words to turn it into beautiful poetry. And I wonder if part of the reason for that is because you are writing for those who can no longer. A year ago this month, a fellow acclaimed writer and one of your closest friends, Rifat al-Arir, was killed with his family in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. And you posted a remembrance on Instagram in which you say, "How should I live to tell your story?" How are you answering that?
I mean, I grapple with this question. I mean, how can I live a life where I can have enough words, enough ways to just tell the story of Rifat? Because Rifat's story is not the story of one individual. It is the story of more than 200,000 people who were either killed by Israeli bullets and Israeli bombs, or died just because there is no medicine, no doctors, no ambulances. Rifat's story, who taught so many students, so many people, so many young writers in Gaza to find their voices, to publish their pieces. He was a mentor, he was a connector, he was a father, he was a son, he was a friend, he was an ice cream lover, a strawberry picker. I mean, he was so many things. I mean, even people who never met him, they felt like they knew him, they know this person. You know, he has published an anthology, Gaza Writes Back. And in that anthology, he included 22 stories to correspond to the number of days Israel spent killing people in Gaza between December 2008 and January 2009. And it was the same war, the same assault during which I was wounded. I was 16 years old. So now imagine how many stories, how many poems, how many tears we need to write and spend in order to write about what's happening right now in Gaza. And imagine how many more we have to write and reflect on and post. Just imagine how many posts on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook we have been posting and updating and crying. And I mean, nothing is happening. I know that people are following and crying with us, but this is not protecting any single child in Gaza. This is not bringing food to people, but this is what we can do as people. I am a writer. Other people are reading what we are writing and they are sharing what we are doing. And this is important. But the thing is that we need to find a way to put an end to this tale that Rifat wanted us to write.
After the break, why Mosab has stopped writing in his native Arabic. So I want to talk about the power of language. Amnesty International recently concluded that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. It's a legal term, but that declaration is something that is significant for a major Western organization in the West to say, especially when the leaders of countries like the United States do not call it that. What do you make of why it's a controversial word, given everything you've just told us, what you've lived through, and what the world is all still witnessing?
Well, I mean, first of all, if what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide, then can someone please give us one word that describes what's happening in Gaza? And what's happening in Gaza is as follows. Israel cut off electricity, cut off water, cut off internet connection, cut off fuel, cut off medicine. They targeted families who were sleeping in schools, in mosques, in churches, in hospitals. Gaza is besieged from Egypt's side, from Israel's side, from the sea. So people have been trapped there for all their lives. People who evacuated North Gaza and went to southern Gaza, where Israel asked them to go, and then they killed them there. People who went to Rafah, they then evicted them from Rafah to Khan Yunis, and now there are more than 1 million people in a tiny spot of land. And they continue to block the entry of international journalists. I mean, what do we call this really? Is this a war? Is this an assault? No, it's not. It is a genocide. People who are dying because of Israel's terroristic campaign, they are dying because there is no medicine. There are no doctors. There are no hospitals. What they call it when 70% of Gaza infrastructure is either damaged or destroyed. What do you call it when all universities in Gaza are destroyed? Okay, what do you call it when there is no safe place in Gaza?
Yeah. Well, that brings me to your relationship with language, a more personal level. You are bilingual. You write poetry in Arabic and in English, though I've heard you mention that you haven't written a poem in Arabic since October 7th. Why is that? And how different does it feel when you write your feelings in English?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't written a single word in Arabic, not a poem, not a short story, not a, yeah,
Wow.
nothing. Because the things that I'm living through, the things that I'm witnessing, so I'm the witness and I'm the victim at the same time. The things that I'm witnessing and I'm living through are things that are absent from Western media. So I mean, I find it like I have to report on the suffering of my people to people in the West, which is responsible for the genocide of my people for over 76 years. I mean, for me, it's the genocide is not only about what happened after October 7, but look at what has been happening before that. We have never been able to sail in our sea or even welcome some guests from other countries through the sea. I have never seen an airplane in the sky over Gaza. I'm 32 years old.
Wow.
I've never seen an airplane
Wow.
in Gaza. And the first time I left Gaza, I was 27 years old. And I had to learn the difference between a terminal, a gate, the group number when you board the plane. I was 27 years old. So I have to teach people outside of Gaza that this is the life that we have been leading. And this is the story of my grandparents who were expelled from Jaffa in 1948 and who died in the refugee camp. And the same refugee camp that is bombed right now by Israel.
You mentioned that it is your job to teach people. And in our audience, we have those who are here because they want to be taught and those who have lived it and their grandparents have lived it. And so they know. And so you don't often have a chance where those two groups of people are together. And thus, I know you haven't written anything in Arabic since October 7th for this reason. But I wonder if you remember any of your Arabic poetry that you could recite a little bit for us so that we can bridge those two groups of people.
Sure. So I have an Arabic poetry collection, which was published early this year. And these poems were written over the past 5 years. So this is one poem. أحداث معلقة. لو كانت السنة أقل من 12 شهرا لعشت سنين أطول. لاحتفلت بأيام ميلاد أكثر وبرؤوس سنة مضاءة بفوانيس شارعنا القديم. لو كانت الحروف 29 حرفا لكانت شبابيك بيتنا أكثر. لزاد عدد كلمات قصائدي وقصصي ولزاد عدد الكتب على رفوف مكتبي.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So I understood about 50% of it. For those who might need a little translation, can you tell us the gist of what you just recited?
Yeah, these are suspended actions. And in it I say, if there were less than 20 months in the year, I would have lived more years in my life, and I would have more birthdays, and I would have seen more lights in the streets of my old city. And if there were more than 29 letters in the alphabet, I would have more windows in my room. I would have more poems. I would have, more books on my shelves. If there were 5 seasons in the year, I would have seen the earth better. And there would be, the flowers would have new colors because there are 5 seasons, And I created names of new colors that I made up by blending the names of some planets in our solar system. And if there were 5 directions in this world, I might have found my homeland, building itself using its flag and creating its name from only one letter. And while its national anthem would be made up from each stone falling on a string of dust.
That's really beautiful. Haunting, but beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. You were born in a refugee camp in Gaza, el-Shati camp, the beach.
Yeah.
What a beautiful name, right?
Yeah.
For a refugee camp. You were a teenager when the blockade was imposed on Gaza in 2007, and your journey out of Gaza wasn't an easy one. For many people, poetry can be a means for defiance, resistance, grief, healing, love. What is it for you?
Yeah, it is an important question, Malika, because poetry for me is about preserving the memories of so many people that I lost, places that I lost, places that even though the land itself remains, but the things that were on the land are no longer here anymore. So I'm preserving these things. I'm keeping record of everything. The memories that I had, the memories that I could have had if there was no occupation, if there was no siege. And also I could create new memories, imagining what kind of lesson I would have with my students if some of them were still alive. By the way, I lost 2 students of mine in airstrike just 2 months ago. And I'm sure I have lost so many more, but I don't know the news because it's difficult to get names of people who are killed every day. So it frees me because I'm delving into my memories. I'm freeing it from the trauma that I'm living, because sometimes you can talk to people about things, but when you sit with yourself to write a poem, you are delving deep into your dreams, your memories, sometimes your nightmares. So sometimes when I put these things on paper, I feel like I'm just releasing myself of some of the pain, some of the trauma that I have in my heart. And it's also a way of resisting the occupation, because Israel wants to kill people and they want to prevent anyone from talking about it. And it's important to report not only on what's happening. For me, poetry is not only reporting on what's happening, but also how it feels to live what's happening. This is why poetry is very important for me, because it is a record of actually the experience and the human feelings, because we are not in cameras. We are human beings who are reporting on both of these elements.
And that's The Take. Do you have other poets in mind you'd like to see on the podcast? We want to know who. Use the comment section below to send your suggestions. And if you'd like conversations like these, give this episode a thumbs up. And remember to subscribe to the Al Jazeera English channel here on YouTube.